Are you ready to uncover the unspeakable truths behind one of the darkest chapters in American history? Join us as we look at the horrors of the Wounded Knee Massacre, ranging from the stolen rights and ghost dances to conspiracies and deaths. Oh, and stay tuned for revelations that will shake you to your core, hidden within each section. Prelude to tragedy, the build-up and ghost dance. Picture this, it's the late 19th century and tensions are running high between Native American tribes and the US government. For centuries, Native Americans have called the Great Plains home, living off the land and following traditions passed down through generations. But as westward expansion sweeps across the country like a wildfire, their way of life is threatened like never before. The United States government also put increasing pressure on the Native American tribes, forcing them onto reservations, where the indigenous people had to depend on government provisions. They attempted to force the Lakota to adopt farming by reducing their rations, even though the reservation land was unsuited for subsistence farming. Many people were resigned to their new lives, and had the right to live the way they wanted to taken from them. Enter the ghost dance, a spiritual movement that emerges among Native American communities as a beacon of hope in a time of despair. The ghost dance wasn't just any old dance. It was a powerful expression of cultural revival, a way for Native Americans to reconnect with their heritage and find solace in the face of adversity. It also combined aspects of their traditional religion with Christianity and provided a distraction from their worsening living conditions. Many American Indians also believed that they had been defeated and confined to reservations because they had angered the gods by abandoning their traditional customs and embracing those of the white man. Many Lakota thought that if they practiced the ghost dance and rejected the ways of the white man, the gods would create the world again for them and destroy all non-believers, including all non-American Indians. But to the US government, the ghost dance was seen as a threat, a rallying cry for resistance and rebellion. They feared that the movement would incite violence and unrest among Native American tribes, challenging their authority and disrupting the status quo. As tensions mount on both sides, the stage is set for tragedy to unfold. The ghost dance spreads like wildfire across the Great Plains, igniting hope in the hearts of Native Americans and sparking fear in the hearts of settlers and officials alike. But amidst the chaos and uncertainty, one thing becomes abundantly clear. The seeds of conflict have been sown, and it's only a matter of time before they bear bitter fruit. Who was involved? Although many people have assumed the Sioux group was involved in the massacre, the primary victims were actually the Lakota people. The Sioux was not a separate tribe, instead they were a group of tribes in the Great Plains. The Lakota was one of three main subgroups included in the Sioux. The leader of the Lakota during the Wounded Knee Massacre was Spotted Elk. His half-brother was Sitting Bull. Spotted Elk was courageous, but he also valued peace. At first, he worked to move his tribe toward the white man's way, but their situation worsened. When Sitting Bull died, his people combined with Spotted Elk's group. Spotted Elk decided to move his new group to the Pine Ridge Reservation, where they met the U.S. Army on the way and never reached their new home. The American forces that stopped the Lakota tribe that fateful night were led by Colonel James W. Forsyth. He served at several locations before joining the Civil War as a Union soldier. Despite not having a natural talent for military tactics, he became a colonel when he joined the 64th Ohio Infantry. Some say his actions directly led to the Wounded Knee Massacre. But although he received criticism from some people, the American Army obviously praised him for his bravery. The massacre unfolds. So what exactly happened at the Wounded Knee Massacre? Due to the highly controversial nature of this event, there are actually several versions of what happened at the Wounded Knee Massacre. However, there are a few points of agreement. So picture this, Spotted Elk and his group of Lakota people begin their journey to the Pine Ridge Reservation on December 23, 1890. Chief Red Cloud, the leader of the Native American group in that area, had invited him. But about 20 miles from the reservation, the Lakota people are forced to stop at Wounded Knee Creek, and Colonel Forsyth joins the scene, and we know tensions start to arise. At this point, there are around 500 American soldiers and 350 Lakota people, 230 of them being women and children, which is a very uneven balance. Colonel Forsyth started small talk with the Lakota, leading to an argument. Now here's where things start to get dicey. In the middle of the argument, one of the Lakota's medicine men, Yellow Bird, began performing the ghost dance, asking other Lakota people to join. The American soldiers were terrified, believing this was a prelude to war. Add to the mix a misunderstanding over a Lakota man named Black Coyote holding onto his firearm, and it's a recipe for disaster. Poor Black Coyote was deaf and did not know English. When he refused to give up his firearm, a fight broke out, and a shot was fired. Both sides fired at each other, but the exchange ended in only a few minutes. And in the blink of an eye, almost every Lakota person at the camp is either dead or wounded, their lives snuffed out in a senseless act of violence. The United States had 64 casualties, but most of those injuries and deaths were caused by American-owned firearms and cannons. The Lakota people were buried in a mass, unmarked grave, and the event's details have been shrouded in speculation since then. Conspiracies and confusion, two contrasting accounts. Hold on tight because the confusion doesn't end there. In the aftermath of the massacre, there are conflicting accounts of what transpired. Some of this confusion began immediately after the event. The soldiers had one version of the story, and Philip Wells, Colonel Forsyth's translator, had a very different interpretation. Philip Wells was part Sioux, but brought up as a white man. Some historians believe Wells's upbringing prejudiced him against the Lakota people, and he purposefully caused misunderstanding between the two groups and escalated the tension. Apparently, he overheard the Lakota men discussing plans to attack the soldiers. Talk about enemies from within. Americans had already completed the first weapon search and had separated the Lakota women and children from the men. Wells' story discusses Yellowbird's ghost dance. After this point, though, it dramatically differs from other versions. According to Wells, after the ghost dance, some Lakota men began firing at the United States soldiers, who returned fire. In the confusion, the Lakota men shot the women and children, leading to many Lakota fatalities. Although Wells's narrative is well known, modern historians have several problems with it. It is unrealistic that the Lakota men would have talked about a plan to attack the American soldiers with a known translator on site. Also, in past encounters, Sioux men, including the Lakota men, did not take risks when their women and children were in danger. Historians generally discount Wells's story today. Thankfully, there are other accounts that turn to the testimony of Private Hugh McGinnis, a soldier of the 1st Battalion who was present at Wounded Knee and later revealed the truth about what really happened. According to McGinnis, the soldiers very cruelly, deliberately targeted the Lakota women and children, opening fire on them without warning. He participated in the Wounded Knee Massacre, but was angry about how it turned out because he was severely wounded by one of the American cannons. His account provided the evidence many Native American activists needed to prove the Wounded Knee Massacre had not been a battle, unlike what the American military had claimed for years. According to Private McGinnis, the troops set up the American cannons around the Lakota camp when they arrived on December 28th. Colonel Forsyth then ordered the Lakota men to surrender their hunting firearms. When the men protested they couldn't eat without them as part of their culture, Forsyth ordered a search, and the soldiers separated the men from the women and children. About 20 United States soldiers, including McGinnis, were guarding the women when a shot rang out. Immediately after that first shot, the American soldiers opened fire on the women and children without heed of their fellow soldiers standing in the way, which is how McGinnis was injured. The first attack was purposefully aimed at the women and children. The Lakota men came under fire after that, who tried to protect themselves with clubs and other weapons they had left. Many historians view McGinnis' story as more accurate than Wells's. McGinnis' story also confirms the 7th Cavalry purposefully attacked its own men, despite the military denying it for years. His account also closely aligns with the reports given by the few Lakota survivors. There were about 50 people who survived this massacre, and they passed on their stories to their grandchildren. One survivor, Alice Ghosthorse, talked about what Yellowbird said during his ghost dance. He prayed he would die instead of his people. Modern historians now believe Philip Wells had a hand in the massacre, although whether he was a poor translator or intentionally malicious is unclear. Either way, Wells mistranslated Yellowbird's prayers during the ghost dance, directly leading to the Wounded Knee Massacre that killed about 300 Lakota people and did not spare the United States soldiers caught in the line of fire caused by centuries of hatred. Aftermath. One of the most evident things we saw was the United States government's complete disregard for the horror of the massacre and its attempts to cover it up as a battle or an accident. Major General Nelson Appleton Miles was one of the only people who expressed concern. Although Miles had previously been promoted for his bravery, he is remembered today as one of the only people speaking out about the massacre, fighting for the survivors to receive compensation for what happened. Miles still believed the Native Americans should be under the authority of the U.S. government, but he believed it should be done as peacefully as possible, not by attacking civilians. Miles was shocked when he first heard about the massacre and demanded an official investigation. He also thankfully relieved Colonel Forsyth of his position. Unfortunately, many people at the time interpreted this as Miles looking for a scapegoat. Oh, and wait for it, another twist in the story. Forsyth even claimed Miles had given him orders to kill the Lakota people if they turned hostile, but this claim was later proved to be a lie. Miles had actually ordered Forsyth not to enter the camp. Many of Forsyth's men supported him, though. Miles could not confirm the facts of the massacre in the military tribunal, especially because many of the people investigating the matter did not believe the investigation was necessary. It appeared Miles's efforts had been wasted. And when exactly did the US government take accountability? In just about 1990, they expressed their so-called regret. Yes, not more than 40 years ago. We hope you were stunned by the chilling revelations we've uncovered in our exploration of the Wounded Knee Massacre. From the stolen Native American rights and the cultural ghost dance, to the historical conspiracies and countless deaths. But this is only a fraction of the history uncovered today, so subscribe and like to join us in our journey of unraveling historical secrets. And don't forget to comment about what other hidden narratives you'd like to know.